Welcome to the Money to Meaning podcast, where we explore ways to bridge the gap between money and our heart's desires. I'm your hostess, Amy Adler, and today I have with me guest Cynthia Mears. And I'm going to let her talk a little bit about what she does, but she's a professional in the wellness industry and a great colleague and friend of mine. And I'm really excited to have her on the show today. So, welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's so nice to be here and to connect with you again after a couple years. I haven't seen you. Yeah, I'm a manifesting generator. We were talking about a little bit earlier. So I know a lot of things about a lot of things, but the place that I've really landed is in the health and wellness space. My mom was in medicine. She told me that I should either be in medicine or garbage because there's always going to be a need for both. And I went into project management instead. And, crazy series of life events ended up in medicine. And I specifically am in functional medicine, which
Mhm.
is, really understanding the root cause of dis-ease. And not just physically, but in all the areas. And so I do my best to walk the walk with people. I'm not a guru. I'm not, someone who's going to hand you over a protocol and say, this has worked for the other 30 people that I worked with. This is really about understanding where people are at, what they need, how they need it, and connecting. What I've found is that humans are meant to be together. They're meant to connect on a really deep level because we all have a piece of the puzzle. Just
Mhm.
happens to be that I have a lot of information around health and healing in all the aspects of that. And so that's what I say I do. My title is a clinical nutritionist and a functional medicine health coach. Also have a bunch of other names I could go with because as I mentioned, I'm a Manny Gen, but we'll stick with those two for this conversation.
For anyone who doesn't know, the manifesting generator is one of the energy types in the human design. And human design is a really great way of learning about ourselves and really about others too. It is not like the Myers Briggs or the Enneagram or the um, disc profiles that all of those require us to answer a lot of questions about ourselves, but the human design is based on our date, time, and place of birth, and that's it. It is under the assumption that we came here with the choice to become something specific in our lives before we even ever were born, and that reflects who we are, what our gifts are, what our challenges are, what we're going to experience in our lifetimes. It's pretty amazing. But the energy type, the main energy type manifesting generator that Cynthia, that you just mentioned, is the same that I have too, which is why I think we both get along so well. One of the many reasons why we get along so well is because we both have that energy to be curious about things and to be involved in a whole host of different activities and ideas at the same time and to just
Yeah.
chase whatever floats our
And
boat in the moment.
yeah, being lit up
Mm-hmm.
about things and sharing them, I think is the biggest piece of manifesting generators is that when it comes from us, it's so true and so full of passion, and we make it happen, which kind of sets us apart from the other designs. So yeah, but it's cool to hang around with other people who get it.
Yes, it is. Yes. And there's really just no denying the accuracy of this information. Like it is.
Yeah, it takes into account astrology, astronomy, I Ching, Jewish mysticism, quantum physics, personality. It's like the cornucopia of things, and it's really the blueprint for how you are designed to show up in the world
Mhm.
in every capacity. And for me, when I found it, it just gave me permission. It gave me permission to be who I knew that I was all the time, but was constantly trying to change to fit in um, to this society and these rules and other people's ideas of what success looks like.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wait a second. I shouldn't judge that. That's actually my superpower. That's amazing.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, one of the things I love about it so much too, especially as someone who has a background in accounting and fraud, like I'm very analytical minded. And so the idea of learning how to like go within my body was like I would get that instruction so often, and it really drove me nuts because I had no idea what that meant until I understood human design. And then I got it, like, oh, this is happening in the heart space, and oh, this is happening in my throat, and this is why I feel like I am so tight here, is I feel like I'm not speaking my truth, or and so I learned a lot about how much the body does keep the score. I love that book too, Vanderkock's book. And so yeah, human design was just such a beautiful way of getting to know a person, very quickly too, that you can find out a lot about them just by asking them some information about what different points in their human design. So thank you for bringing that up. I love that you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, like, what do you love about your work, and why you do it.
Wow. I think, I've always been a caregiver. I've always been really servant-hearted. I grew up around very unpredictable adults. And so I was always the one making sure that people were okay, that there's safety, that there's certainty. Um, and so as I got older, you talked about the body keeping the score. You can do all the right things with your health, but if you have trauma that's unresolved, if you have, limiting beliefs, if you have relationships that don't serve you, all of those things create that dis-ease, sometimes manifesting physically. And, you know, over the years of being that person who I call it the go-to girl, I've always been the go-to girl, the one with all the answers, the one that holds it all together.
Yep.
Um, I ended up getting a chronic disease. I got cancer.
Mm.
And it's interesting because, one of my specialties in medicine is integrative oncology, the natural side of cancer care. And specific types of cancer have personalities. And I had breast cancer. And that personality is I'm never enough. I'm never
Mm.
good enough. I'm never smart enough. I'm never going to be enough. And so, going through that journey, not using conventional medicine, being my own medicine, which means you have to be 100% accountable for yourself. You are your medicine. What you work through, the choices you make, what you put in your body, what you think, what you feel is all you. And, a lot of people go, I'm not strong enough to do that. I'm just going to do chemo. And I'm like, man, you're the one who's like, I could never do that. Um, but looking at your life and owning it and working to heal it is a journey. And why I do what I do and why I love what I do is because I didn't have anyone on that journey with me.
Mhm.
And I tell people you wouldn't climb Mount Everest without a Sherpa. Why in the world would you take on, you know, basically taking your whole life and putting it out on the table and going, which pieces fit? Which ones do I want? Which ones do I not? Did I earn that? For me, I never felt like I was at battle with my health, with my body, because it was a message. I didn't do anything with my tumors because they weren't pushing on anything important, but they reminded me every single day how I want to show up in the world. And, you know, that was a gift and you know what? I changed my whole life because of that, all of it. I mean, like, you wouldn't have recognized my life 7 years ago. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't gotten cancer. I know it. I prove everybody wrong. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to keep doing this. It was comfortable for me. And I see so many people in that space because they don't know there's another option. They're stuck in a system that's broken and they don't have anybody to walk beside them. And so, doing what I do, I don't have like a traditional program. I have some health and wellness like Get Start programs, but for the most part, everybody's so individual. And again, like I really feel like the number one thing that's the most healing for people is feeling loved and cared about.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's why I'm here. So that's what I do.
I love it. And so you alluded to the fact that the healthcare and insurance industry is broken. Can you talk a little bit about some of the places where you've seen its brokenness?
Yeah. So so that life events that led me to medicine led me to conventional medicine. So I actually started my medical career in workers' comp and
Mm-hmm.
pain medicine. And so I ran these clinics that the payouts to the doctors every month, like their cut to the two partners, was over $1 million. And these were people who got sick at work and one pill of a narcotic that we would dispense because if it's workers' comp, you can get retail. It's one of the only places where you can sell pharmaceuticals in a clinic. And it was like $300 a pill. And so what would happen, and again, I was in this be successful. I'm raised by a single independent woman. I'm a female in the medical system. I'm an administrator of this very lucrative, like, I wore high heels because I'm small and I needed to be bigger and I needed to be louder and I needed to work more hours and I needed a longer commute and, all the things. And I didn't know what I know now about health and wellness, right? Like I told you, I was a project manager and then got dumped into this conventional medicine world. My mom was in conventional medicine. She was chronically ill her whole life. So I knew you got on pills, you got sicker, you manage that, and then you pass away, right? That's how it works. And I'm watching these surgeries happen on people's backs, spinal cord surgeries. And I'm noticing the percentage of revisions. And a revision happens when you cut a lead too short on a spinal cord stimulator. And I started to realize that you made more money on a revision than you made on the initial surgery.
Oh, good grief. So were they doing it on purpose? Maybe.
All I can tell you is what the data looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was all about money.
Mm-hmm.
You spent 5 minutes with a patient. These people never got better. And then what happens in workers' comp is the claim ends. Once somebody doesn't get better or worse, you're permanent and stationary, it's not going to change, and they pay out the claim, right? That's it. So the irony of how I got into sort of like integrative medicine was they said, create a program that helps people get off the medication because then they're not permanent and stationary. Then there's the possibility that they'll get better and it will reopen the claim. So let's put them on meds and get them completely, you know, reliant, I'm going to say, not addicted, on these pain medications. And then once we max that out, then we'll put them in our other program where we can open the claim back up and at least get another $60,000 for a 6-week program. But in that program, we taught nutrition and we did cognitive behavioral therapy and we did yoga and we did the right things. And so I felt good because, yes, we wrecked them. Yes, it was a huge mess, but at least I got to be a part of what the rest of their
Totally.
life would look like. And that was like my first glimpse into these people who take this oath to do no harm, get blinded by the money, and somehow make that be okay.
Why do you think that they were blinded by the money? Like, what was it about the money that was making them behave that way?
It's you get accustomed to things, right? You get the status, you get the car, you get the I here's what I think that when you have the more things, somehow that makes you look like a better doctor, right? Like the doctor who drives the, Ford Escape or whatever, but does amazing things for the right reasons doesn't look like the doctor who practices in San Francisco and has a Escalade and a, whatever else. Now, me knowing what I know, I prefer to go to the doctor with the Ford Escape because, I know what his life looks like versus, you know, because people who make a ton of money in medicine are playing the insurance game,
Mhm.
the cookbook.
Because the insurance game plays them just as much.
Well, I mean, if we wanted to go back to the beginning and go to the Flexner report of 1942 or early 40s, that was when Rockefeller decided that he wanted to sell pharmaceuticals, and Carnegie partnered with him. And they basically told all of the Ivy League schools that they would put all this money into those schools if they pushed pharmaceuticals rather than natural medicine and started the whole quackery marketing campaign because nobody would go to an MD before that. They only went to homeopaths and chiropractors and osteopaths. And so as soon as that switch happened and you can't patent Mother Nature, you can only patent synthetics, then they had to do that in order to make the money. And so that was the
Wow.
flip
And that
over.
was not even 100 years ago. Wow. I did not know that. That is so interesting. Hmm. Yes. And now
It's
Big
well
Pharma,
documented.
I'm going to have to do some research on that. And now Big Pharma is owned by or owns the insurance companies. So they're all in bed
It's
together.
all the same company. Our
Mhm.
food is owned by tobacco and big pharma. And it's like if you trace it back, it all goes to the same place. And
The money
those
bags.
aren't people with our best interest at heart.
Yeah. I mean, when you think Rockefeller, you think wealth and that they're, and then here they are creating a system of control, basically.
And they started with Harvard. And, who doesn't want to go to a Harvard trained doctor? That's how that all started.
Wow. Oh, the ideas are brewing in my mind now. I'll have to save that for a future conversation. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk
Yeah.
about the other industry that I have the most experience in, which is divorce. So you've been through a divorce yourself, correct?
Mhm.
How did your divorce experience impact your health and your work?
Yeah. So I was 25 when I got divorced. I had been with him since the freshman football game in high school. And, you know, it's interesting because the marriage affected my health in a negative way. The marriage was broken. I would say I was a single married parent. Um, he was an alcoholic,
Mm.
great, great human being, but just broken and not really willing to do the work. And and so I was trying to find all these external ways to find my happiness. And I did that with food and rest, not moving my body because I was so exhausted. And and it broke me. I mean, I gained a ton of weight. I had a ton of inflammation. And then I started to look at myself, right? I didn't blame him. I blamed me for letting that be okay. And I started doing self development and I started studying Toltec philosophy. I actually studied with Don Miguel Ruiz's sons and um, and just realized a lot of the rules I was using for my life weren't even mine. And so I started to shed. I started to shed things that didn't serve me, that I didn't own, that were given to me by parents and teachers and all the other people in my life. And I started to really own my worth. And when I started to think about what do I deserve? Like, you know, what's right for me? It wasn't that. And so I started working out in the garage and I started watching what I ate and I started moving my body more and I started to really pour into myself as a way to prepare for battle because I knew what was going to come and I wanted to be the best version of myself because I knew it was going to be gnarly.
Mhm.
And so I would say the marriage impacted my health negatively, and the divorce actually impacted my health positively.
It makes perfect sense that freeing yourself from that negative energy would free up the rest of your energy to rise and to be healthy.
Well, and it's crazy because I didn't have a community to talk to. Again, I didn't have a Sherpa on this, massive journey of self-exploration. So I never really spoke it to anyone. It was all internal. It was all the reading and the realization. And the day that I left was not planned. It was just like I reached a point where I just went, that's it. I don't deserve any of this. I deserve so much better than this. And I literally just grabbed my kids and an empty suitcase and threw some clothes in it and put it in the car. And he was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to go. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to go. Like, and he's like, but I've been doing so much better. And I went, you have. You're doing your best, but my best looks different. And so I'm going to do my best somewhere else and we're going to both be better. And it was like from that day on, my belief in myself and my worth has like only gone up from
Mhm.
that point. So it was like I needed to go through all of that foundation work to be strong enough to be okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, we all have to make that decision
And
when we're
ironically,
ready.
you ask about my work. Okay, so I was in project management at the time and I signed up to get a severance so that I could pay for an attorney for my divorce. And so, I got the severance the day before I left. So he got half of it. And here I was with I left the house, I left everything, and I had no job. I had no way to care for my kids. And I had this huge battle, but I knew it was going to be better. I knew that I was doing the right thing for myself and my kids. And I had so much faith and I just stuck with the faith. I held on to the faith so hard. And that was when I got offered the job in medicine.
Mm, divine timing. Perfect.
The
It's so
thing I swore
interesting,
I'd never do.
right? We always want to set ourselves up for success and not take leaps that put us at risk like that. But
But
yeah,
I told my
sometimes we
mom
need
I'd
to.
never be in medicine. And here I was. So crazy.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that you shared that because it's oftentimes a little uncomfortable for me to give advice to my clients that feels financially less sound. I mean, because that is my job is
That's
to
your
help them
job.
become financially stable, right? As a financial consultant in divorce and the CPA. And yet I find myself so often feeling this like very intense gut feeling that I need to tell them that it's more important for them to get out of this relationship and the negotiation process as soon as possible than it is for them to fight for more money. And usually they look at me strangely for a minute and then it hits them. Yes, this is what I need to do because what might be right to, more just in the long run is not good for me because it's going to require me to put a lot more money, time, and energy into getting to that point. And then I lose all of that time to make progress towards what I'm really here to do.
And you're paying a price regardless because of the
And
emotional toll that it takes
exactly.
on you to just not be like energetically severed from the situation. Obviously, in your role, it's a little bit harder for you to have that conversation, but it's just like
It's
in
not
health, you will pay. You either pay on the front end or you pay on the back end. You're gonna pay.
right. Well, and I have my personal experience to be able to vouch for that because having been through two divorces, my first one, I ended very quickly. I kind of bent over and accepted things that I didn't feel I should have in order for it to be done fast, which I regretted. So then the second time around, I did the opposite and I fought. It went all the way to trial. The divorce took a year to finalize for a 2 year long marriage. And within a month or two after it was finalized was when I got sick for the first time. And so just as soon as the adrenaline stopped pumping constantly, my body just said, "We're done, Amy." And so yeah, I have been sick now for almost 7 years since then, off and on for the most part. But yeah, it has been a really long healing journey because I didn't follow your advice just now. So now I can give that advice to my clients from my own personal experience that, yeah, that I mean, the amount of money that it costs, even just from a financial perspective, the amount of money that it costs to heal from the physical damage that's caused by going through this amount of stress for this period of time is more than the amount of money probably than we'd be fighting for. And if that's the case, it's not worth it. It's time to just move forward. So I love that you said that. That's really aligned with my approach. So in talking about divorce and health journey and all of that, it makes me wonder if you feel like the trajectory of the major events in your life were intentional to make you who you are today, and if that helps you look at those more challenging events that you've been through differently than you did when you're going through them.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I mentioned, my young world was very unpredictable. My mom had a chronic disease. I had to take care of her from the age of 4 on.
Mm.
I had a crazy, crazy life when I was young, and it created a really great skill set for me to be really successful in an unpredictable world, to be really independent and to be fiercely competitive and to always want to be the best of the best and to work harder and be smarter and, push myself all the time. It served me so well. It kept me safe. It kept me fed. I had a great career in traditional medicine and running clinics. Um, and then I got sick. And then I had to look at my skill set, right? And what was it doing for me in that present moment? And it turns out all those things that served me really, really well weren't serving me at all anymore. And I had to take a hard look at all those things and to not be upset about it, not to be like, that's why I'm here, but be like, wow, what a time to reflect on how incredible those skills were for all that time and to be grateful for all of that and to look at all the experiences I had and the wisdom that I collected. And and yes, it's all like one of my favorite quotes right now is lost in the journey, found in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's me. I've had such an, like people look at me and they're like, that happened to you? And I'm like, that didn't happen to you. Like, you don't know
Yeah.
that your traumatic life isn't normal, right? Until you hear from other people and they like start crying when you're talking about your childhood and you're like, but I was fine, right? And so yes, it has all been incredible pieces of this magical puzzle that led me to this life that if you would have told me 7 years ago this would be my life, I would have said you were absolutely insane. Um, every single day I wake up, the first thing I do is self-care. I'm not getting in a car, driving 2.5 hours one way to go shape shift myself into building someone else's dream for them and, you know, do HR and QuickBooks and all the crazy things that I didn't enjoy. And, even though that was really hard on me to run someone else's businesses and all of that, one of my last clinics was a leading edge integrative clinic. And I got to be a piece of building something incredible that changed thousands of people's lives. And then as I became a nutritionist in that clinic, because once you know, you can't not know, I was on the care team. And so I was learning about all of these diseases and all of the truth and how you really heal. And, my job was to look at all the supplements and, to decide what was real and what wasn't real. And, talking about the broken system again, there's just as many people trying to make money in wellness as there are in big pharma. They're just using, people's vulnerability as a tool, which is horrific. And so all of those pieces, I look at all the difficulty in my life and all the trials and tribulations, and it's led me here to have this wisdom to help other people in a really profound way. And yeah, so I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for my upbringing, like my cancer, all of it. I'm so grateful for all the things that show up in my life every day. I'm always like, what's the lesson? Like, I'm going to be quiet and just like, figure out what the lesson is here because that lesson isn't for me. It's for me to share with other people. And so,
Mhm.
what I do now is obviously I walk on people's health journey with them, but I also teach people what I do, right? I told you before I got on this call, I'm coaching 100 other health coaches because when I got involved in what I do now, it's because my treatment stopped working. I didn't say this in the beginning, but I spent $100,000 wholesale on my integrative treatment for cancer. And after 2 years, my numbers stopped moving. And my doctor said, it doesn't make sense for you to keep doing this. It's not doing anything. And I didn't have a plan B. There was I mean, I did everything you could do naturally for cancer. Crazy things you wouldn't even believe me if I told you. And so that was it. I didn't have another option. And so what I did was I went home and I told my husband, it's not working anymore. My decision is to start building my legacy. I probably have 5 years and I want to create a story that the girls will tell their children who will tell their children. Like, I want to make that big of an impact in the world. And I don't know how I'm going to do it yet, but that's my primary focus from now on. And I just wanted to help people. I wanted people to be well, to avoid the things that I wasn't able to avoid. And, very long story short, ended up finding some products that I love that are, just food. And there was a business tied to it, and I could bring other people in and coach them to do what I do. And now collectively, first of all, I have no cancer. I don't even have the stem cells that make tumors for the last 3 years, which is just absolutely incredible. And I've helped like tens of thousands of people tangibly change their labs, like tangibly add more vibrancy to their family and more life to their years. Like I could have never done that on my own. And so, yeah, it's all meant.
Totally. Wow. What a beautiful story too. So I want to wrap up by asking the question that I ask all of my guests. What does the title of this podcast, Money to Meaning, mean to you?
Yeah, it's so interesting because my whole business, I help other people do what I do. And I always say impact with income is what I do because all of my goals are impact driven. So I don't know if you've ever read this book. I'm going to plug this book, The Desire Map. So
Mm-mm.
it's how to create goals around impact, around what's important to you. Because I say, there's a product tied in my toolkit that provides me income. The more families that I impact, the more income I get. And so when I looked at the name of your podcast, I was like, it's the same but almost opposite of what I talk about all the time because I'm always talking about impact first,
Mhm.
right? And so it was interesting for me to think about that, but I'm a unicorn. Like if I look at the way that the world operates, everybody's looking to get money in order to make a difference at some point. Once they have enough, then they can give a little bit to do the right thing, right? Which, when we talk about broken systems, I think that is the functional medicine piece. That is the root cause of why people don't do the right thing, because the income is the most important thing, and the impact is when you can, right? When it's the right time, when it's enough. And I feel like as we talk about like shifting these paradigms, which is what you're trying to do, it's this. It's the how do you do the right thing and still get compensated, right? And I'm so excited that you're doing this podcast because you have to start somewhere. You have
Mhm.
like I was telling you know the golden store starfish story, right? About
Uh-huh.
the person walking along the beach. So there was something, and my daughter was like, well, "Why are you even trying to do that?" And I said, "Well, it's important to that one person, right? Like I'm not going to change all the people." And they'd never heard that story before, so I got to share that story with them. But it's you're doing one podcast at a time to shift this paradigm, and I think it's so amazing.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, it does feel really meaningful to me. And you're right that the goal is to shift your focus from being on money to being on meaning. And that was initially what was the impetus for creation of this podcast, and also the name of my company and the group. Everything that I'm creating around it is all focused on helping people disengage from this focus on money, because like we were just talking about with the broken healthcare system, and it starting in the 1940s from a place of greed, or of money makers or money bags wanting to make more money, that this resulted in a whole population of really sick, unhappy, unhealthy people who can't afford the kind of care that they really deserve and need to live with vitality and joy in their lives. And that is not the kind of world that I want to live in. And I certainly don't want to perpetuate that kind of world. So helping us to understand that that's how it started, and that that's not really the way that we're meant to live, can help to kind of rewire our systems and our brains to focus on the fact that when we help other people, the money kind of just shows up. I assume that's been your experience. It's definitely been mine, that when I shifted my whole career to being about helping
Yep.
people and truly helping people, like not making people think I'm helping them, but really not, but actually truly helping them with what they really need, the money just shows up. It's not always in the same exact form that I might be expecting. Like it's not necessarily that my client pays me for the service. Sometimes, and a lot of the time that does happen, but other times it's that I get a really great discount on something that I really needed or wanted, or money shows up in my mailbox that's a refund of something that I'd totally forgotten about, or something. It's different, but it is the universe's way of rewarding us for being a good person. And so
Yeah, that's
I'm
that's
so
how
happy to have you.
I describe what I do around like, yes, there's an exchange of goods and services, but I never want a transaction ever. I only want a transformation. And it's not the transformation I want for you, it's the transformation that we discover together. But it sounds like it's exactly the same with what you're doing. Like this
Mhm.
isn't it, our universe is not meant to be a transactional universe. We all have a piece of the puzzle. And like I spent 2 hours with someone yesterday helping them on something. And I told her, she was like, "Why are you doing this?" I'm like, "Because sometimes a person loving someone else for no reason is the only thing you need to make a gigantic difference in your life."
It's true.
It's so true. And,
Very, very
I
true.
know that you've taken a gigantic leap of faith in your life and in your career and in the things that you're doing. But I can also see like that you look different and your vibrancy is so beautiful and you're showing up with this passion and purpose. And that's what's going to shift this.
Thank you so much for saying it. It really means a whole lot to me, Cynthia. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show today. You've shared such helpful information. I think so many people will really benefit from it. And I'm really grateful to you for sharing that with us. And I think we probably need to have another conversation on the podcast again soon about some of these other topics we didn't get to delve into.
Yeah, love
So
that.
thank you again, and can't wait to see you again soon, hopefully.